So let's look at how you can use this. So let me pull up a resource. So this is just a VM here. And one of the things that we've done, but this works, what I'm going to show you here should work on pretty much every resource in Azure that's managed through the Azure Resource Manager. So that's pretty much all resources now, with one or two exceptions, and then everything new that you create. There is this third tab below overview. There's the activity log. That's the audit log we'll come back to. Is this thing called access control. And I have to confess, I felt like the UI that we had there was not super good a couple months ago. It was very confusing. We tried to clean it up quite a bit, and this is the new UI that we just shipped recently in the last sort of month or two that's now live, that I think is a lot cleaner and makes a lot more sense in terms of how you manage things. And basically what it does when you click on it is it will show you for this particular resource who is in various roles. So you can see here there are 4 owners that have full admin access, meaning they can delete it, they can change things on it. I've got 3 people that have a subset, or what we call contributor access. They can't delete it, as an example. They can't change the password, as an example. But they can change simple things. And then if I wanted to, I could also create a reader role, which basically means you can see everything except for confidential secrets. But you can see, is the machine healthy? What's the metrics log? When was it last started? But you can't change anything. And what's nice is I can see this in one view. You can also see on the right-hand side where these settings are coming from. The inheritance thing is super powerful, but it also confuses people, which is why we put it here. Is often you add people to a subscription and you don't realize, ooh, when I did it, they now have permission to everything in that subscription. So it's really useful to go into anything you're deploying in production, click on it, and then say, gosh, why does Joe have owner access? Oh, I added him up here. Let me go up there, I'm going to change his access, and I'm going to explicitly not have him be owner for everything. I'm just going to give him owner for what he needs to be. And this way you can easily, when you see a person in that list that you don't understand why they have ownership privileges, scroll to the right, and now you can see exactly where they're getting the privilege from. You can click on it and then basically change it, and makes it much easier to lock things down. You can also filter based on roles, scope. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do here that's more advanced, but hopefully this default view is useful. If you want to add someone or delete someone, you can also do that. So if you click add permission, it's pretty easy now to create new roles. And so you can see these are some custom roles. These are the standard owner, contributor, reader. So let's say I want to add a new user to this project. They're a junior member of the project, so I want to be careful that they don't have too much permissions. So I can now select who they are either by typing in a name or a role. So I'm going to add this person's name. They have lots of potential, but still we don't want to give them too much privileges. What's nice here is you notice we do integrate with Active Directory. And so if you use Azure Active Directory, which everyone does when they're in Azure, you see all your cloud users. If you sync it with your on-prem environment, you pick up everything. So that's why you see his picture, is because it comes out of our Enterprise Active Directory. I click Save. And basically this is updating that particular resource. And now if I come here and hit refresh, what I'll see is instead of just having users in 2 roles, what I should see here in just a second is I now have 3 roles with 1 user in that role. And again, you can see it was set at this resource level. They're a reader, that's who they are. And again, simple way that I can now add and remove things. And if I basically say, hey, you've checked in 1 too many bugs, I'm going to remove you entirely. Just go ahead and hit remove. And now he has to look over someone's shoulder anytime they want to see something inside the site. So that's pretty easy how you can add and remove permissions. Again, best practice, look at the permissions you have set for all your resources. You'll probably be surprised how many people, if you're in a team environment, have permissions that they don't really absolutely need to do. Click activity log and you can basically see any operation, including reading keys. As part of my monitoring system, I could go ahead and say, show me administrative activities in the last 6 hours. And this is places where I've got a script that have written things, etc. So this is that audit log. And for anything where I've done something, I can go ahead and who's initiated it. I can list the exact action that happened. Since it's a key, maybe I won't actually show it. I don't think it actually shows it, but just in case. But this is that audit log that I can basically go after the fact if I want to understand who changed what in the environment and go do. Last thing I'll mention is we now have Azure Active Directory manageable through Azure, the standard Azure Management Console. So you can now manage all your users inside your directory as well in one place. The other thing you can do as part of this is set up not just users and roles, but you can also create what's called a service principal. And a service principal is like a user account, but is even more locked down in terms of what it can do. And specifically, service principals aren't allowed to log in interactively into the console. And so anytime, for example, you have like a CI/CD server inside VSTS that is pushing stuff into deployment, rather than, please don't enter your own username password into your build script, because if your build environment is ever compromised, they now have your username password. Instead, create a service principal that's specific to like my build server, lock it down using that same UI I showed you so that it can only deploy things on that particular resources that it needs to, and then use that inside your build environment. And that way, if your build environment was ever compromised, you don't end up with a situation where you've given access to all of your production deployments through it. That's another best practice, and you can now manage that in addition to users and roles directly in the Azure Active Directory console.